And I'm a bit of a contrarian when it comes to education. I went through a lot of the educational system, public schools, private schools, graduate degrees, doctorate. But what we get, I think, bogged down in is we're talking about, you know, accountability standards, assessments, measuring. We're talking about how we're measuring whether we're doing a good job. But I don't think anything we've talked about other than just a little bit of this rich curriculum that I hear. Almost nothing we've talked about today is how do we go from being 25th in the world to first in the world again. And so I think we get bogged down how we have to have measurements. But I kind of go crazy with all the measurements, whether they're federal or state, I'd rather have them state. Whether they're state or local, I'd rather have them local. But those really aren't making any kids smarter or really doing, this is how we're measuring our success. How do we get more success? So I'd like to propose something, and this is something that excites me, and this is the concept of the extraordinary teacher. And I think this is something that we could take our education to another level if we utilized. We have the internet, we give all our kids smartphones, smart tablets, and we think they're going to get smart with a smart tablet. Well, I think they'll get smart if we connect them to a smart person. And so what I would propose is an extraordinary teacher program, such that we pick the 1,000 best teachers, maybe in the country, or maybe the world, maybe become sort of like the NFL or the NBA of teachers, and they teach everybody. So instead of having a classroom of 15 kids in the classroom, we have 1 million kids in the classroom. And what I mean by that is if Sal Khan is the best teacher or explainer of physics problems, we have him teach everybody. That still means you have a teacher in the classroom who reinforces that, but why wouldn't you want to go get a lecture from the person who can explain calculus better than anybody in the world and can apply it to everyday life and say, why would it be exciting to know calculus? Because you can be an engineer that works in NASA or does this, and we're going to work on a problem on jet fuel that's needed and parabolic curves of, where the, how the rockets are launched, et cetera. But you would get that by beaming these people in and not being stuck with just your local set of teachers who aren't bad people, but everybody knows, like in my kids' high school, there was a man and a woman, they were extraordinary. Everybody knew they were extraordinary. They were both teachers. They came before school. They stayed after school. They were just amazing. Pay them more, but have them teach all of the kids in Kentucky, not just the kids in that one high school for that one class. And maybe it's one area within that one class that they're the best at teaching and they specialize in that, and you beam their lectures to everybody in Kentucky, or maybe everybody in the country. Above and beyond that, if the extraordinary teacher idea was a good idea, then maybe the people who are in college that want to be teachers, when they do their what's it called, when they go in the classroom, their classroom teaching, let's only put them in extraordinary teacher classes. And everybody knows these people are out there, and sometimes we lose them to other parts of business because we don't pay them enough and things. But so one is the concept of having an extraordinary teacher program, having them teach beyond the walls of their school, connecting us. Are we doing any of that? Do you like the idea? And then the second question would be, should we train our teachers not just in any old teacher's classroom, but in an extraordinary teacher classroom? And do we do any of that? Since I'm from Kentucky, we'll start with Dr. Pruitt.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's a great question. A lot of what we're looking at with this new system is to start to develop a collaborative nature within Kentucky. That's one of the reasons why I've been fairly critical of the new regs, because I felt like when you put people into that summative score, why am I going to share? Because if I share, you're going to beat me. Whereas if you actually reward people for working together, you can actually do things like expand the purview of those great teachers. So if District A has a program that is fantastic, but District B does not, having those two districts actually come together to work together is actually something that I do hope we can really promote within our new system, that we do allow people to get outside of their classroom, that we do expose more students to our great teachers, but also to great programs, especially around the areas of career and technical education. As to the second, I think that the best thing we could do for our pre-service teachers is put them in an incredible teacher's classroom who's fired up, who's passionate about what they're doing, who understands that a good teacher learns continuously.
Are we doing any of that our teachers beyond the best at their school, are we doing any of that around the country? Let's start with Dr. Darlingham.
We are doing some of that, one program that does that is the residency model, which is funded under the Teacher Quality Partnership grants federally, and some states have put money into it. What it does is it says, particularly in high-need communities, urban and rural schools, you're going to study under the wing of the very best expert teachers we have who know how to teach our kids right here in this community for a full year as an apprentice while you're working in the university courses that are connected up to get you credentialed and get your, usually a master's degree. District and federal funds, sometimes some state funds, pay for that. And then the resident owes that district 3 or 4 years of service in high-need schools in that community. The outcomes are very strong, very high ratings for these teachers who are trained by the best teachers in those districts, and very high retention rates in these high-need communities. Some university programs have also moved in the direction of this model school where you get the very best teachers and you make that tight connection. And then there's some places with career ladders where teachers who are very expert, like the 2 that you described in that school, can move up a career ladder, and some of their time then, and some compensation is attached to this, is really spent being a mentor and a coach for other teachers so that they get this. And then finally, the distance learning kind of idea. Saul Kahn is a friend of mine, and I'm very appreciative of the work that he does. I think some people are bringing that in. Of course, you need teachers on the ground, too, who can work with kids because every kid learns differently, and the lecture that works for one kid, may or may not work for everyone. So using that expertise, bringing it in, and then having teachers learn how to work with kids around.
And then one other thing I would add to the extraordinary teacher concept is that bring people into the school system who are not teachers for lectures. You could bring them in remotely or physically. But for example, I always got the feeling as a physician, nobody wanted to hear from me in the public schools because I don't have a teaching degree. Whereas I think it should be the opposite. You should have physicians, physicists, great innovators in our society, computer technology coming in, exciting the kids, giving a lecture, giving one lecture. Doesn't mean they become the teacher, but who wouldn't want to have these extraordinary, successful people outside of teaching come in also and help with the teaching? And
there are some districts that are really taking advantage of that. I think it's less prominent than it could be as a tool and a resource for schools.
And I can give an example. In our district, we're doing just that. And we're fortunate because we have 5 major retirement communities right in our backyard. So we have retired engineers, we have retired physicians, and they come in and actually work side by side with our students. Not only our high school through CTE, but actually in our elementary schools, in our STEM programs. So they are there adding their expertise. And in addition to that, the students really learn then from them how this is applied in the real world. It makes sense. The other thing we're doing in our district, we call it Your Call, your community of leaders and learners. We don't want to be losing our expert teachers from the classroom. We don't want them to believe that the only place they can be experts and leaders are when they leave and go into administration. So they have complete control over their professional development. They adopt a problem of practice and then have to work collegially to solve that. And through that, we're identifying those teacher leaders who others can learn from. And it really provides then that ability for those folks to have voice in what happens, but also to feel appreciated as they lead and learn.
Thank you, Ms. Welcher.
Senator, your idea, I think, is quite intriguing, and I think at scale certainly could be possible given the experience that I've had of extending the impact of great teachers. Much of what you're saying is exactly what we did at Ranson IB Middle School. We looked at who were our most effective teachers, and we said, you've got this, you know how to move students, and you also know how to teach other teachers, so we're going to give you a greater responsibility to own that success. And while we didn't expand it outside of our school building, we did that model exactly. We used blended learning. We gave one person who was an expert teacher like Bobby Miles responsible for all of science and had 350 students that he was responsible for, and ultimately ended up with the highest growth in our entire district. So it's absolutely possible. I think your idea of placing our most novice teachers and those who want to go into teaching with the most effective teachers is absolutely necessary. When you're a first-year teacher, you are literally just mimicking what you see. We want our beginning teachers to mimic the best so that our students can grow better faster.
Well, thank you all for coming, and that's my plea to you as educators and also to those across the country. Let's don't get lost in measuring our success, that we forget that we're trying to create success. And that's also what we've discussed a little bit in the rules today is we don't want the rules to be so overbearing in how we measure our success or how we test our children that we're losing sight of we need a richer curriculum. We need, grades shouldn't overwhelm everything. Measurement of grades and measurement of teachers and measurement of schools shouldn't distract us from the purpose of getting the best education for our kids. Thank you all.